When I was in my late teens, my aunt, uncle, and 2 cousins went out of town for a week. They asked me to house sit while they were gone. Now, to set the scene, they lived in a nice house built in the 1920s in a decent part of town. Oddly, they didn't have any window treatments on the ground floor, so I hated hanging out in the living room after dark. They'd built a sunroom on the back which was all glass and looked out in the modest, very dark backyard. Upstairs were 4 bedrooms and a bath, but my cousin had started sleeping in the basement because she'd had a series of very creepy experiences in her bedroom upstairs. Now, I thought the basement, which was mostly finished, was pretty creepy. At the bottom of the stairs was a sort of den with 4 sets of double doors that blocked off the laundry area. Further on was a super creepy, dimly lit bathroom and the bed area where my cousin slept. Anyway, my second night there, I went to bed not long after dark, so about 10, as it was summer. I was reading with a desk lamp. I kept thinking I heard noises out of the little window, which was set high in the cement wall but would be ground level from the outside. I finally decided that I was just freaking myself out, so I decided to go to sleep. I laid in bed with my eyes shut and could suddenly hear 2 women talking quietly right outside of that little window. I got up and crept over, and immediately the voices stopped. I peeked through the window and there was nothing, no shadows, absolutely nothing. I shook it off, went back to bed, and lay down again, but before I could close my eyes, the whispering started up again. I sat straight up, staring at the window, and I could hear it. I was straining my ears to figure out if it could have been a radio or TV left on, but there was no background soundtrack or anything, just these voices, and I couldn't make out what they were saying, but I could tell it was about me. I turned on the lamp, and they stopped short with like a shush. I sat there for a while hugging my knees, but eventually, after more than an hour of nothing, I convinced myself it was my neighbors or something. I turned off the lamp and rolled onto my side. I closed my eyes, and just as I was starting to drift off, I could hear those voices again. But this time, they were right next to my ear. I sat bolt upright and turned on the lights and it stopped again. But I can promise, I didn't sleep a wink that night, and I didn't go down in that basement for the rest of the week. This happened 2 summers ago while I was house sitting out in California for an older couple I had met at a conference for work. It had seemed like a dream scenario. The couple wanted to vacation in Hawaii for 2 weeks but didn't want to board their cats, and I had been chatting with them about wanting to visit California again because I loved it the first time I went, and we figured that we could mutually benefit if I came out and house sat for them. So I flew out there, and they showed me around for a few days, taught me how to care for the cats and their plants, gave me access to their house and their cars, and before I knew it, I had dropped them off at the airport and I was on my own. At first, it really was like a dream vacation. I was staying in Oakland and making forays into San Fran, Sonoma, Monterey. In the mornings, I could walk out the front door and shortly be hiking the pass surrounding nearby Mount Diablo, and I was just ultra content with the world. I was so enamored by the area that I had actually started looking into taking some steps to relocate out there even. But then one day, about halfway through my final week there, when I got back to the house, I felt really odd, almost like I shouldn't go inside. I shook it off and went inside anyway, because it was getting late and I needed to put out dinner for the cats. Once I was inside, I forced myself to ignore how off I felt. I made some food for myself, went to bed, and I was shocked to find the shy cat hiding underneath my bed and crying. This was the first time that I had ever seen her up close. The entire time I had been there, up to that point, she never left my host's bedroom unless she didn't realize I was around. Again, I ignored feeling weird, and I just assumed that she had decided I was okay and went to bed. I did start locking my bedroom door that night though. I also remember that about halfway through that night, I thought I heard someone walking around in the gravel outside of my window. But after listening for a bit, I didn't hear anything else and went back to sleep. The day after, in the morning, I still felt a little odd, but kept up with my plans for the day. I drove out to a little music festival in Sonoma and went clothes shopping, and I had an overall great day. When I got back to the house though, I found the front door locked in a way I hadn't left it. Basically, my hosts never locked the deadbolts, only the lower second lock, and that's the only lock my key worked on, so I never messed with that deadbolt, but it was definitely locked. So I had to call my hosts and find the hide key, which, to their credit safety-wise, was buried like a whole foot underneath a bush outside and had definitely not been dug up for a long time. So I used that, went inside, and kept the key with me just in case it ever happened again. And it did, but with a different door. This time, I had stepped out into the garage to get a drink, and when I turned around to get back into the house, the door was shut and locked. I could use my normal key on that door, but I was still pretty bewildered. My own cats are whack, so I think in my mind I was trying to come up with a way the cats would be locking me out of the house, but I was coming up empty. I decided I must have been misunderstanding how the locks worked and just wrote it off and started checking and triple checking locks when I went out of the house or into the garage. The next morning I felt awful. Nausea, body aches. I had no desire to leave the house, so I decided to stay in and watch Netflix for a day. This vacation stay was like a full 2 weeks, so I didn't feel like I was in any hurry to get all of my touristy things in anyways. But as the day went on, I started to feel that feeling of wrongness again, and it morphed into feeling incredibly watched. Around mid-afternoon, it got to the point that I was so uneasy that, even feeling awful, I decided to get out of the house for a bit to shake it off. I was getting a bit low on food, so I went to the grocery store and bought a couple of food items that I didn't think would hurt my stomach, and as I started to leave the checkout, the cashier said the generic, "Have a great evening," and I just instantly started crying, shocking myself and the poor cashier, because I just had this intrusive thought that said, "You might be the last person to ever say that to me." When I got to my car, I was still crying and my entire body was telling me not to drive back to that house. I couldn't not though, because I didn't want to neglect the cats. So I drove back, parked in the driveway, and convinced myself after about half an hour to just go and open the front door. Once I did that, I thought I would get over it and be able to go in and at least feed the cats, and then maybe I'd go and get a hotel room after. But my body physically would not let me inside. It was like I was stuck in the entryway. I then made a deal with myself. I would yell in the house saying I had already called the police and that they were on their way. In panic logic, I figured that would make anyone in the house leave. So I faced the inside of the house, looking down the hallway towards the bedrooms, and I did just that. The second I finished, the lights in my host's room turned on and I heard some banging. I immediately hightailed it back to my car, called the police for real, and proceeded to have a mental breakdown while talking to the dispatcher. Once they got there, they checked the house and didn't find anyone. But the double doors in my host's bedroom were left wide open, and there was a pile of food wrappers in the corner behind the blinds, so they said it looked like someone had been in there. What makes it so scary to me is that nothing was taken, and that based on the shape of the house, that it would have been the perfect vantage point to see me in the living room as I stayed home sick. To explain this, the house was in an L shape, and from the windows into the garden that were in my host's bedroom, you could see into the living room windows. Also, the minute the police were gone, the shy cat was right back in my host's bedroom, and I didn't see her again until I left to go back home. So basically, I think the intruder had been there at least 2 days, forcing the cat to choose between the two strangers, and leading her to choose the one that was a little less strange, which was me. It messed me up pretty bad, especially because they didn't catch the person and I still had to stay in that house for the next 3 days. Nothing else odd happened, and I didn't feel anything off the rest of the time that I was there, but the damage was already done. I've never felt completely safe in a home without doing a complete search before bed since, but I am extremely glad my gut spoke up. I guess I'd rather have some residual anxiety than be dead. My friends went to Mexico for a vacation and asked me to house sit and take care of the dogs while they were gone. They pay me $40 a day just to sit around and let the dogs out when they need to go. I am disabled, so that helps a lot. This is a semi-rural area and houses are roughly a quarter mile apart. Police have to come from town 15 miles away, and response time can be well over an hour. I always take my pistol with me. It's always been quiet when I've stayed there. This time was different. I was in the shower when the dogs started barking and growling. They are big, large German shepherds, and one is actually police trained. The owners loan him to the county as a drug dog, and if you tell them to be quiet, they obey. This time they didn't, so I went on high alert. I shut off the water and looked out the window. I didn't see anything, but when I walked out of the bathroom, I saw a shadow go across the bedroom window. I whispered to the dogs to hush, and they did. And that's when I heard a man's voice. I couldn't make out everything he was saying, but I distinctly heard 2 words, "Come around." So I am sure there was more than one person. I ran into the living room with my pistol and saw the door handle turn. I yelled, "I have a gun and I'm not afraid to use it." I heard feet run away. I was telling Siri to dial 911 and got to the county sheriff fast. She said there were 2 cars on another call not far away, but it would take about 20 minutes for them to get here. That's better than the usual hour, but I was pretty shaken. I explained that I was on a farm and would have to go down the roads and unlock a cattle gate to let them in, and to please tell the officers that I would be carrying a pistol and please do not shoot me by mistake because I was not going to go outside of the house without it. The dispatcher said, "Oh no, do not go out there without your gun, I will tell them." She said to wait in the house until I saw the blue and red lights. I hung up and called my friends in Mexico. Their camera footage can be downloaded through an app, and they said they would go through it while I waited for the cops. I locked the house and went down to the gate when the police arrived. They searched the whole place, including the barn, but didn't find anyone. While they were looking, my friends texted me the camera footage. There was a man on the porch. Unfortunately, the cameras were not angled to get a shot of his face, and of course, it was pretty dark. I still think there was more than one creep because of what he said, "Come around." The police were very nice and said they had passed a man on a bike on the way, which is strange for the area, especially at night, and went to look for him, but that's all they could do. They took a full report but never caught the creep. My husband came and stayed with me for the rest of their trip. One of the neighbors said he found a tent and some gear in the woods a few weeks before, so somebody was living back there. Maybe a homeless person from town. I have house sats again since then and it was quiet. They are going away for Christmas and I will be there again. A lot of people ask me if I would shot the creep if he had broken in. Yeah, I would have, absolutely. I'd be sorry if I had to hurt somebody. But if it's them or me, then yeah, I know what call I'm going to make.